Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
I'm Asana Cayetano.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Monday morning, back to work for us.
Yes.
Other folks are still at home sleeping because they're on vacation.
I was about to say the kids are home this morning. But you know, if you want to look at the glass half full, it also means that you don't have to bother them to wake up, to eat, to get dressed. You just have to figure out what you're going to do with them during the day.
Where are you going to drop them off, or if they have everything at home at their disposal, if they're going to remain at home for the holiday.
Yeah. If they have those built-in babysitters like called grandparents.
Yeah.
Oh, you're laughing out a guilty Sunny?
Hey, my mom and my dad do a tremendous and exceptional job of taking care of my kids, which is good. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay, see, you're saved with this one because we're going to check in on our weather, and we have Francisca on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Marlene. How are you?
I am great. Christmas is getting so much closer. The only thing I need now is that cold front.
Yes.
And it's coming soon?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Let's start with today.
Okay then. What's happening today is that we have relatively moist and unstable conditions. We have what we call a moist surge coming up from the southeasterly.
Yeah.
And so today we'll see cloudy conditions and a few showers and isolated thunderstorms, mostly along the coast over and northern areas.
Okay. And how long will those showers be sticking around?
Okay, we'll see that for most of today, and then later tonight it will decrease over the area.
All right. And what are the winds looking like?
Okay, winds will be out of the east and southeast, 5 to 15 knots, and producing moderate seas.
Mm-hmm. And our high temperatures for today?
Okay, we're going for 88 along the coast, 90 inland, 78 up in the Maya Mountains. And then overnight temperatures, 78 along the coast, 70 inland, and 66 up in the Maya Mountains.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that extended forecast. You've already got me excited with the news to come.
Okay. Later today, a cold front will enter the Gulf of Mexico, move southward. By tomorrow afternoon, evening, it will be over the Bay of Campeche. And then we'll have what we call prefrontal activities.
Which means more rain.
Affecting us.
So we'll have more rain?
Yes. So tomorrow afternoon, starting over inland and northern areas, we'll see an increase in cloudiness, showers and thunderstorms, and then that will spread across the country by tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm. Now, are we going to take the rains if we know that the cold front will come all the way down? Is that going to happen?
By Wednesday, it will cross us, but the unfortunate thing, it will stall right in front of us, and so it will keep our weather a bit moist for the rest of the week.
Oh, okay. So we just get a little bit of chill, and then we go back to rain.
That's right.
All right. Well, we asked for it. It's just not coming our way. All right, Francisca. So we got a rainy week ahead and a cloudy and showery one today.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much for that update.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Same to you.
The only good thing, well, for those who, as we were saying, stay home today, the only good thing was the showers before, like in the early part of the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like we're going to have showers intermittently during the day. And, you know, that was a great reminder of be careful what you ask for, because we are getting the cold front, but we'll get mostly rain from it. All right, we're going to keep things moving this morning with Or Motivation, and it's time for Or Eye Opener, and that's taken from dailyom.com, and it goes like this. We all have a story to tell. Whether you publish it or keep it to yourself or family, allow yourself to be heard. Everyone, at one time or another, has wanted to express his or her story. Writing a memoir to read privately, share with friends or family, or publish is an emotionally satisfying way to gain perspective on your experiences while sharing your unique voice. We've all experienced feelings and events in our lives that we are longing to write down. Giving in to that urge can give you an outlet for purging any frustration, anxiety, or long dormant feelings. No one else has to read it. You may even want to write your story without reading it right away. Satisfying the need to tell your story is not predicated upon your writing ability. It does, however, take effort to write down the truth in detail. Your memories captured on paper as descriptive scenes, sights, sounds, and scents may at first seem disconnected or incomplete, but rest assured that you possess the ability to shape your recollections into stories. More importantly, you are expressing yourself in a permanent way, giving a gift to yourself and letting your voice be heard.
This eye-opener reminds me of that point in time when I was away in college. One of the courses or one of the requirements were for me to turn in an autobiography of myself. Up to that point, I think I was at like 21, 22 years old, right? And I challenged myself to write the autobiography in a retrospective manner, as opposed to saying, okay, well, I was born on this day and these are the events. Yeah. So I chronicled those events backwards, right? So I'm 21 now, this is where I am. But for the past 12 years of my life, these were the pivotal moments, right? And I look at this eye-opener and I contrast that point in my life, that period in time, right? I was a well-known individual then, but not in the media. I didn't have a job as such, right? But when I look at the fact that I had an audience of my peers to share this autobiography with, it allowed me to have a voice insofar as being able to share the stories that shaped the way I think and the person I've become. But it gave me a sense of confidence as well, because when I shared my story and I listened to others in the room, their stories, if I'm thinking, hey, I thought I had a rough patch here or a rough patch there, when you listen to someone else's experiences, it makes you say, you know what, I'm not alone in this world. And that's what I take from the eye-opener.
And I'm sure perhaps the experience was a lot more cathartic than you expected it to be, and that's precisely what the eye-opener is saying. I think naturally we're all storytellers, and we love listening to stories. In fact, that's kind of the profession. That is the profession that we're in. And while a lot of our news stories, for example, may kind of just be reporting facts, the human interest pieces that come out every now and again are really the ones that stand out the most to people, because we love hearing people's stories, and we love trying to see a different perspective other than our own life. You know, I think the idea of having an urge to tell your story is an interesting one. What I love about the eye-opener is how it talks about you don't necessarily have to go out and jump up on a podium and tell your story, because that's how people feel that it should be told. You don't have to put it on YouTube or Instagram. Sometimes, for some people, the best thing is to do it privately, to write it out on your own. You know, that's how some people get into journal writing. I know quite a few people who say they write stories or they write what they call books or whatever it is that they're documenting. but they never really release it to anyone, never
Yeah.
let anyone read it. And that's because it's more of an individual process for you. Sometimes it's letting it out that's what your mind is craving more than having another person read it. And so we all have challenges that we go through. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes when we put it into perspective, we realize that it's not as bad as we think it is. And that's one of the key takeaways that you can have. But nonetheless, even if everybody else thinks your problem is something that should be dismissed, if it bothers you, then it's worthwhile for you to explore it. And one of the ways to do that is to write it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad, from childhood, my dad writes down everything.
Yeah.
He plans, he documents events and stuff like that. He's a natural historian, so that's what he does. But
Yeah.
I've always pondered at the idea of writing things down in a journal.
Yeah.
That's like I'm blessed with having a sharp memory when it comes to events that, you know, have a crucial impact on my life. So I don't have to write that down. I will always remember, and there's a particular setting, you know, a certain atmosphere. And I'm blessed that way, but the idea of being able to write things down is the expression that other people hold on to, because they might not necessarily share it, but it's good to go back to for them, or it's a period of or a process of catharsis.
Yes.
You know, going through that entire.
I don't know if you've ever done it. Usually doing creative writing classes, it's called free writing, where you just kind of not think about what's coming out on paper. You're so surprised as to what you put out. It's like mind to hand without any processing. And I think that's the key part. Journaling is actually a really good habit for people to have. I wish I had the dedication to do it. So I'm sure your dad is better off for having that habit. But even if you're not someone who journals, that's the key point. We all have phones, computers, whatever. Use the technology we now have. I mean, you know, I don't know if people even remember how to write with a pen and paper these days. But write it out, store it somewhere, get those feelings out, get that story out. And if you don't feel that you can read it at this time, read it at a later date. You don't have to share it with anyone, but that can be your own release of telling your story. Right. So that is the eye-opener for this morning, and it is a Monday morning. And so we got to take a look at the big stories coming out of last week and what we can expect for the week ahead. So we're going to shift gears to the Eye on the News.
All right, so last week we're kind of reviewing some of the major events that have happened over the course of the year as we wind down 2019. Last week we discussed the number of persons reported missing who turned up dead. This week I want to focus on the number of road traffic fatalities that we've seen since the beginning of the year. And I think without a doubt, the incident where the 7 persons died a couple of weeks back has been the biggest in terms of the number of casualties.
Yeah.
There was also another one where I think 3 young men died.
One survived, yeah.
Yeah, on the Northern Highway near
Between the Ladyville-Belize City roadway.
right. So that was another one of the more.
Yeah.
I say all of that to say this, right? For a small country like Belize, where the number of motorists that we have on our highways, on our streets, on our highways, etc., when you look at the percentage of road traffic fatalities, is very high when you look at it on a per capita basis, right? And to me, it goes to show that much more needs to be done. I think the onus is on everyone, not only from a policy perspective in terms of road traffic safety and that sort of stuff, but also on motorists and pedestrians and cyclists. Everyone using these thoroughfares need to exercise a certain sense of responsibility, right? We went into the weekend with report of a road traffic accident on Friday evening, a fatal one at that. And this happened in the vicinity of Alta Vista, where at least one person was reported dead on the scene. And the weekend, unfortunately, ended with 2 other road traffic accidents where people lost their lives.
Yeah.
And it just goes to highlight the point that I'm making here,
Yeah.
that there's a certain sense of responsibility. Because even with great roads, you still have to exercise caution, due care and attention, etc.
I keep on saying it because I really think it's such a valid point. When we have the road safety people on, one of the things they keep on pushing is that we stop calling them accidents, because they're not accidents. A lot of it is preventable. Whether you're talking about fog and slowing down with what you can see, rain that will make the road a bit slick, checking your car to make sure it's sturdy to go out, speeding, not using seat belts, overtaking on curves or in risky areas. All of these don't happen, accidents in these areas don't happen by accident. They happen because you've made a choice that led to this incident taking place. So they call it crashes. But this is, you know, I keep on watching all the stories coming out, and it does feel like it's increasing. It does feel like we're losing more and more lives in this manner. But there's so many other spin-offs I think of as well. One is the response, clearly. I think the hearing, we see checkpoints on the road sometimes, and the checking driver's license and your insurance and your car license. I don't really see them checking for seatbelt use. Now, I have to be fair. I would have on my seatbelt, so if I wouldn't know if they would tell me to put it on. But in looking at other cars driving past, I don't know if they check for seatbelts. Mr. Galvez was here, the chief transport officer. He spoke of the fact that while they do train some police, the police who are out there doing checks on the road don't necessarily know all the traffic violations. So they may not be aware of what they can and can't enforce. Overcrowding, people in the back of pickup trucks. These are things that are actually not allowed for. Children should be in car seats. There's so many rules that already exist that we don't enforce that can help to prevent some of the loss of life. Speed limits, clearly, that's one of the biggest issues, because crashing at driving maybe 40, 50 miles an hour will be a completely different set of circumstances than crashing at 80 miles and above. So there's so many things that we have to consider as drivers, and we also have to consider the actions of others, because you could be the most cautious driver,
and that is the thing.
There are other people who are using the road who may cost you your life.
And that is precisely why you said earlier, you're not only driving for yourself. You're driving with the mind frame that, you know what, your responsibility extends beyond you taking care of yourself on the road. You have to look out for other persons as well. There was an incident last week in Trinidad Village in the Orange Walk district where a motorcyclist collided into a tractor carrying water. And from what I was made to understand, the conditions that morning, it being foggy, the individual on the motorcycle did not see the tractor turning in front of him from a distance. And so he collided into the tractor. One of the passengers on the tractor, an elderly person from what I was made to understand, suffered serious injuries in terms of broken leg and what have you. That individual perished on the scene, the motorcyclist. And the description in terms of him being lodged under under the tractor, and the motorcycle bursting into flames, you had to have been coming at a very high rate of speed for something that violent to occur. And it goes back to what I'm saying, an exercise of responsibility.
Yeah.
If you know that there isn't clear visibility ahead, then perhaps you should have slowed down, put on your fog lights or what have you.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's a collective responsibility because motorcycles are one. I've seen people doing wheelies on motorcycles here in the city on the Philip Golson Highway just to stretch before Haulover. And I'm not talking at night. I'm talking in the middle of the day.
yeah.
So it shows the type of irresponsible behavior that takes place. Pedestrians also have a responsibility in using crosswalks. People on bicycles also have to consider the fact that they may not be as visible at night. If you're wearing dark
Yeah.
clothes, you have no reflection, no light, you literally can't be seen in the middle of the night. But of course, road users who are in vehicles, we clearly have the more powerful tool there, and we have to be extremely cautious. I think no one wants to deliberately hit someone down. No one wants to deliberately be in an accident or cause an accident, but we do have to consider what our risk factors are in terms of our behavior. So drinking and driving, which we expect, unfortunately, to see a lot of during this time of year. This silly notion that we say, oh, our car can drive home itself. These things aren't true, and you never know which family you're going to rob of their loved one.
Yeah.
During that process. But just one more thing before we move on. What we haven't heard of, and I've always questioned, is what is the cost? Because every accident victim, every crash victim who goes into the hospital has to go through extreme care. They have to go through surgeries, they have to get blood, they have a whole team that works on them. What's the cost to our healthcare system in meeting the needs of these persons? We had a major accident, the one with the 7 who died just the other day. And so we haven't looked at the implications on the healthcare system as yet to see what toll it's taking. We already know it's overwhelmed with gunshot victims coming in and stabbing victims. We also have quite a bit of people coming in from crashes. So it's not that it's just a far removed issue. It affects us as well financially.
It's a very real issue. So just to conclude with the actual events of the past weekend that I had prefaced, on Saturday, it says here December 14th, at about 12:40 a.m., police responded to a report of a road traffic accident on the Bullet Tree Road. Upon arrival, they observed a male person lying on the ground with injuries to the body. He was later identified as 30-year-old Manuelito Alfredo, and they also observed, not far away, a red Toyota taxi car at the scene, right? And that vehicle was driven by 33-year-old Abel Najarro of Valley of Peace and Santos Najarro, 33 years old, of Valley of Peace as well. So there was a collision, and one of the young men passed away as a result, right? That individual is Manuelito Alfredo Ye. He succumbed to injuries. And down in the Toledo district, there was also a fatal road traffic accident yesterday where an individual, a 15-year-old student actually, died when she was attempting to cross the vehicle. Sorry, let me go back a bit. That individual passed away, 15-year-old Shelmadine Cock, right? It says here that the police investigation revealed that the vehicle was driven at the time by Santiago Cock, 34 years old, and it was traveling towards Bella Vista from Big Falls Village when the vehicle received a blowout, which caused the driver to lose control and the vehicle overturned, and the 15-year-old sadly passed away as a result. So some of these instances, they're actual collisions, and some of these instances have to do with people losing control of the vehicles. Nonetheless, it's a matter, as I said, of serious concern because those numbers keep rising.
And one of the other things that I didn't bring up is that it's actually the main reason that young people lose their lives. That little girl's 15. When you look at the loss of productivity, the life that is unlived from 15 teenagers, 20-year-olds, and even 30-year-olds. It's just sad.
So That's what we're looking at in terms of reviewing, you know, some of the key issues that we're plagued with going into the end of the year. There are also incidents of murder that we are covering from over the weekend as well, but I'll leave that, the coverage of it, for the 6:30 newscast. So that concludes our Eye on the News this morning.
And we are back to tell you all about our show. But before we do, a little bit of chit chat for this morning and some time for our viewers to chime in. And it seems we're still talking about pageants. So, all the beauty queens at the moment are Black women. Is the beauty pageant becoming conscious?
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
I'll be the first to admit that, you know, pageants aren't my forte. But it's a wonderful thing to have the representation of Black women, you know, in these events, and for them to come out on top. Whether or not it's a new consciousness, in a manner of speaking, I'm not sure. Because I haven't really been following pageants that much. It's not really my thing. But I guess there are those out there who are very religious to following Miss Universe and this, that, and the third. You know, and they may be able to chime in.
Unfortunately, I'm also a bit disadvantaged here. I can't say that I love the new Miss Universe and some of the things that she's spoken publicly about.
She's from South Africa,
yes, she is. She is South African, and yeah, what a beautiful bunch of women. I guess someone new was crowned. So out of the loop with pageants, but there are lots of other things to focus on. You can chime in if you believe what your thoughts are on all the beauty queens at the moment being Black women. Right, so we got to get moving into our show for today.
We are discussing in our first segment the importance of buying in Belize. It's a time of year when most people order online, or they go across to Chatham Mall or Melchor or wherever, but the conversation in the first segment will be why we need to keep our dollars at home.
All right, and the second part of our show, social anxiety. Do you know what it is? Perhaps you are someone who struggles with it a bit. We're going to find out more about it in the second part of our show.
And we're going to end off our show this morning with another Christmas feature, and that has to do with the preparation of black fruit cake.
All right, so that's what we have in store this morning. Before we do, though, we have our birthday shout out. And today we are saying happy birthday to
Jacob Leslie.
All right, Jacob, you have a great day. Of course, that comes from all of us here at Channel 5. And open your eyes. Do enjoy. We'll take that break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the importance of buying in Belize. So stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize Bank
And welcome back. We are kicking off things with a conversation with Marcelo Blake. He is the Vice President of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And as we had mentioned prior to the commercial break, we are going to be discussing the importance of buying in Belize during this festive Christmas season. Good morning, Marcelo.
Good morning, Isani and Marlene. Thanks for having me. A Monday morning.
Yes.
Morning indeed.
You guys do this every week and every day.
That's right. Bringing
Hats
the
off to you.
important topics, right?
Yeah.
So, Marcelo, this is such an important conversation for us to have, but as a country, because of the revenue that we generate from being able to buy within the country. But then for the individual spenders, they're just thinking, how can I stretch my money? And oftentimes that means spending it outside of Belize.
Right.
How do you approach the topic, being considerate of the financial times that people are going through?
I think spinning out from the earlier conversation you guys were having, the cost of medical care as an example because of the RTAs. So where does money come from for all of that? You know, when you buy in Belize, you keep your dollars here, creates more business for the community. Of course, you have to pay taxes. So all of that then goes into maintaining roadways and lights and making sure that safety is a priority.
Yeah.
And so in doing all of that, there's a cost. So if the money is not staying here and it's going over to the other borders, whichever borders they are, then it's not helping to grow our economy.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the stretching of the dollar. What I would counter that to say is then we need to take a look at ourselves internally as a country and decide what those priorities are to be able to encourage that the dollars stay here.
Yeah.
So without naming a border, why do we go? Looking at the reasons why.
Why do people go to like Chedamal for a second?
Right,
I
so-
mean, people know.
Lower prices is one
Yes.
for sure. Possibly better service, right? We're looking at the opportunity for a variety, whether it be goods, whether it be service, entertainment.
Yeah.
So if all of that's there, how can we then replicate that here?
Yeah.
Or at least improve on the products we have here? And I say products and services to ensure that we are encouraging that the dollars to stay here.
Yeah.
Again, taxes is one of them. I mean, when we look at the level of taxation in this country and the complexity of it and the various avenues in which the government and others collect, then tax on top of tax on top of tax, and then you end up with very high goods on shelf, very
Yeah.
high service charges. So how do you balance it out?
Yeah. This
really?
has been a call from the private sector before. Looking
reform.
at how you can be competitive with the prices that are available across the border or even online, because people
Right.
can go online and shop now. In order to reduce prices in Belize at your grocery store, at your gift store, whatever it is, it would mean a reduction in taxes in terms of especially importation. Now, that's not, I mean, it's been a cry we've heard before, but it's never been seriously looked at. Can you explain to us how it trickles down?
All right. So the way the build up is that the taxes at whatever level they are
Yeah.
continues to add to your cost. So we always say trade license is not a tax, and I don't need to hit on that. But
Yeah.
if it's a fee, it's a flat figure.
Yeah.
If it's a tax, no, it's dependent on some other element that creates the value of what that license is.
Yeah.
That adds on to your cost. So we look at taxes generally saying, okay, business tax, the GST where we're only an agent collecting. So all of those are just add-ons.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that go into your regular operations day in, day out that could be considered a tax, and trade license is one of those. Layers and layers, and that's where you end up with the larger value.
Okay.
Now, tax reform is a must, but it's not the end all. I mean, that just helps to create a playing field where now we can compete. It doesn't mean that it's going to guarantee that the dollars will stay. But now, as you said, you're in a competitive arena where, okay, prices in Chetumal, and then you have to weigh the cost of, okay, so when you are going, if we're now competitive, you had to pay a bus fare, you have to eat, you basically have some leisure fun and spending money, and so everything adds up.
Yeah.
And when you add that on to what you spent on actually buying items and bringing them back,
Yeah.
and then hopefully when you're at the border, you actually get charged a little bit of duty. Dividing it out and see what the cost of that item actually works out to,
Yeah.
compared to buying it here.
When we look, I think Marlene touched on it, but I perhaps you're kind of glossing it over. The idea of online shopping, because we're only focusing on going across into Chetumal or Melchor, but I'm thinking that a vast majority of Belizeans are now using credit cards to purchase items online.
Right.
That's still sending money out of the country, correct?
Correct.
And so
Exactly.
if we're discussing keeping the money at home, it's kind of ironic that you're doing it from home, but the money is still going out of the country.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people, they're purchasing on Amazon. They go to various websites for companies that advertise products and what have you that we're very much into, either fashion brands or electronic items and stuff. And so how do we compete against that? Or how do we say, you know what, well, as opposed to purchasing something online, perhaps I can go to Mirab and get a better deal on that item. How do we?
How do you counter that
Yeah.
argument? Really, then it's looking at how you're able to reduce prices to compete. I mean, at the end of the day, while you purchase online, there are certain levels of costs associated with that. And even if you're shipping it in, there should be some duty
Yeah.
levels that you're
Yeah.
paying. And then that comes out to a final price that now, when you compare that to a shopping at Mirab, then how does it compare? Because at the end of the day, it's really stretching your dollar, as you said. Are we going to be competitive now? I think probably not, just because of the varying taxes that you're having to pay and operations, business operations.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the other side to look at there is if you're not buying at home, which means there's no revenue being generated by the business houses, you end up with these overheads where you cut the expenses of rent and you cut the electricity. Eventually you end up having to downsize a little, and if you're not making enough, then that business eventually disappears.
Yeah.
There's no more money coming in, there's no more taxes being paid.
Yeah.
How do we continue to survive? We then end up in a very unhealthy economy and not able to provide for the people what they need.
You know, with online shopping, I think at least with the importation of the goods, if they're shipping it in, there's usually some taxes levied on
Right.
what's coming in. But I'd imagine that perhaps the largest bleeding of resources take place with people coming through the borders, whether it's through the Mexican border, the land border, or whether it's coming through the airport. Is that a part of being able to recover the money that's been lost outside of the country?
A part of it, because remember, the tax is not 100%, so
Yeah.
you would have already spent that portion online.
Yeah.
The foreign currency has to go to pay that credit card.
Yeah.
And so the funds are going out, and it is impacting then our foreign reserve to
Yeah.
be able to pay for the importation. But that percentage then is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
depending on the item you're bringing in, anywhere up to 20%.
Yeah.
In excess only if it's those sinful items.
I'm trying to recall, we've had, I think, on a few occasions where the Mexican embassy in Belize would release the numbers as to how many people went over the border. And I remember once, I think it was at least twice the population of Belize that had passed through the border.
Probably in a year.
In a
Right.
year, yeah, in
Right.
a year.
Just recently, the
Yeah.
long weekend in October,
Yeah.
you had about 12,600
Yeah.
persons going.
Yeah.
You know, equate $100 per person.
Yeah.
You're talking about $1.2 million that's gone.
Yeah.
Outside of the country being spent in another economy where none of those taxes, none of those revenues come back to our country to improve anything, infrastructure, healthcare,
Yeah.
education.
But you see how this is hard for people to accept.
Right.
Because we're all
The reality
selfish.
on the ground is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, wages aren't increasing, cost of living is high, and so at the end of the day, it's trying to make sure that I can make ends meet.
Yeah. And to be able to spend my money on quality items. Let's use the most common goods I think brought across the border. Toilet paper. I'm always fascinated by this. Everybody's bringing a big pack of toilet paper over the border. I don't know why.
I wouldn't go as far as Chatham to purchase toilet paper. I don't
That's
see
you.
I know.
Stand at the border, you'll see a different story. So the thing is, because I can't understand. I mean, it's a pretty far trip for toilet paper.
That's what I'm saying.
One, we do produce locally.
Correct.
Two, the brand that is most often brought over is available locally. And so I was trying to figure out what the price difference is. And it is significant. So people do pick it up there because it's so much cheaper. So when I look at how people are spending, they're just trying to be smart spenders with their money. They get a quality item for a cheaper price, and then they bring it back home rather than getting something that is not of the same quality standards. So it also means that locally, whatever we produce, and also locally, whatever we are selling, the standards there have to be good.
Right, correct. It has to improve, and we do have quality products that are produced. Again, economies of scale may have the cost not where you'd want it to be. But the products are here and are available. So it's more looking at, again, not to harp on taxes, but if you're able to widen the base, reduce the level of the taxation, then you end up having a wider spread for the share of that cost. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, government has to always push a revenue neutral kind of conversation. So while I bring down the rate, I need to make sure that there's more that's being taxed so that it's even. But it also adds then to the contraband conversation. The reason why they're higher, there's so much contraband in parallel is because there's a higher tax. Look at the items that are actually brought in under that activity is really because the tax rates are super high. And so we create the rationale for why I would risk bringing that product because of the tax rate. Now, if everything was 5%, just showing the rate, then would it make sense for me to, one, take the trip over, but also, two, if I can get it here and it's only 5%, then why would I go through the hassle of contrabanding or paralleling an item?
But you look at items like soft drinks, beer, soaps, that sort of stuff. When you see persons going over into Bortis or those other areas and they're contrabanding, indeed, those are items that ordinarily we'll be able to find here, and maybe not in that particular brand, but those are items that are readily found in country. But there seems to be an economy in and of itself off of that kind of activity, where it's difficult for persons to say, well, you know what, this is how I make my bread and butter, by bringing in items and then putting it on the black market.
There are products that are produced here that are of the same quality. Maybe the variety is what we're now working on, where you're having the larger size, like you mentioned, the sodas, which are in the larger 2-3 liter sizes now, that are produced locally, that you used to go to buy over the border because it was, in your view, a better buy at the time. But if you have it now locally, why not scratch that from your list then of things that you're bringing over?
You know, it is important that we support Belizean businesses, and I think that perhaps we simply bank on the fact that perhaps customs are doing the jobs, and we don't pay attention to our own spending habits in how much we spend outside. But I have a question in terms of getting some data or research. Has the Chamber or any other entity taken the initiative to look at what are the most common goods that are being brought in from, whether it's Mexico, United States, Guatemala, wherever people are traveling from, to get an idea of what needs to be more competitive locally?
As a Chamber, I don't know that we've looked at it at that granular level. Again, coming by that information is challenging. What we get out of the various institutions like the SIB and, for example, the Customs Department are kind of these blanket labels where the drill down is where really you want to see. And then looking at what you have in your business community, the entrepreneurial side of things, to make sure that you can then select those few items, focusing on what they need, whether it is that they need a short-term tax holiday because you're starting up a new business and getting into something that is in fact available outside of the country, and focusing your energies on making sure that you can grow that to a successful level, so that that's one less thing that persons have to bring in. But the information is somewhat challenging to come by in order to be able to do that exercise.
It would be,
So
I mean, it would just be good to know, because like I said, we know toilet paper because it's so big. You have to see it, but I don't know what else people actually go for. I mean, are they getting canned goods? Are they getting, we know detergent is another one as well. And again, I think that's a price point issue. We're just guessing what people are buying, or we can anecdotally know what our families may pick up as well.
I think each of us as consumers know, and we all have family, and we all know what they go across the border to buy. It's a matter of, I think, doing a quick basket survey to say what it is are those, that top 10 products that you're going to bring each and every time you go.
Because that could also kind of help things locally if you know what products you're looking at. But even beyond looking at the practice of purchasing outside, we've seen where businesses have tried to accommodate the market. We're talking about the downtown sales that take place monthly in Belize City. There's the big November 19th weekend, which is the big shopping weekend in Belize. I know Chamber worked on getting some discounts from the business sector. What does the business sector do to try to keep people here and in their stores shopping?
The discounts, they're not, I think they don't happen as often enough as the public will demand. And there are just so many other activities happening where, you know, apart from the downtown sale, a lot of businesses now do their own little mini expos. You know, they participate in our general expo in September. But it's kind of tailored to specific times of the year. Probably more of an ongoing discount, maybe loyalty programs. Again, there are different ways, I believe, of giving back without necessarily always having to do a price adjustment. You know, gifts with purchase, things that used to happen. I mean, my parents, when they were growing up, you know, you used to go and the store, your regular corner store would show in something when they said a brata you get. Little things like those that help to offset the cost of living, I think can work without necessarily always going to price. I think that's kind of the arena we've gotten into, where if I'm not getting it in price, then I don't consider it.
But I think it speaks of the economics of the individuals who are purchasing. I mean, you know, Marcelo, you might give me a free plastic bottle, but I really just want to spend less money so I can buy more, because I have kids and families and gifts to buy and all these things that are equally important. So it is ultimately going to be about price. But I know you represent the business sector, and you have expenses, you have wages to pay, and all these things. So what is the middle ground on something like this?
I think giving up of something that's then a conceived value for you. So instead of giving you a cup, you may not need, you have 6 cups and you keep collecting them from everybody who's giving them, but maybe giving you back in product. Right? So you have, you're buying a basket of grocery and I throw in an extra can something. You know, something that's an everyday use. You know, an evaporated milk, a canned meat, thing of that sort. To then add value, but it's actually helping you to then technically pay less, because you're getting an item technically for free that you will definitely utilize and has a value to you, as opposed to necessarily the cup.
And looking at how the Christmas is faring off so far, the Christmas season is faring off for the business community, how are things going?
I think it's going well. I mean, since the November 19th Black Friday, you know, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of movement, and depending on the type of business you're in, this time of the year normally for a lot of businesses kind of help you to accumulate enough to take you through the next year. So you'll see a lot of offers, a lot of discounts, because this is when a lot of the businesses make the bulk of their money to be able to sustain themselves for the next year.
And I mean, I think that one of the things that we do, that there was that campaign, Buy in Belize, Build Belize,
Belize.
many years ago. I don't know if you still use that slogan, but it is kind of just getting the message out to the everyday shopper and saying, yes, you may be able to save a few extra dollars if you go online or if you go across the border, but also consider the investment you make at home.
Right.
How do you remove just the business sector hat and talk to everyday Belizeans and say that?
You have to build your country. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you spend here goes back into making sure that you have good health care, good roads, better education. So the social things that are important, because at the end of the day, stretching your dollar is one thing, but there are still the things that you live here and need to use and the services that you need to get.
Yeah.
So getting that to the level that it needs to be and the quality level that it needs to be is going to be dependent on us making sure that we're spending at home to be able to provide to that. Because all the 1.2 million we do over the border and just in one weekend, none of those dollars come back to this economy to improve anything.
No.
So that's lost money that
Yeah.
never gets recovered.
All right. Good reminder to all of us, and we really appreciate you coming in to share this information with us. It's not always a popular conversation that people like to hear, but it is something that we do need to be reminded of. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break now. When we come back, we are going to shift to a conversation about mental health, and we'll be talking about social anxiety. So please stay tuned.
Belize Bank's Christmas Flexi Loan
back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today. We're joined with professional counselor Krista Courtney. Good morning. As we have a conversation about mental health, and this time we're diving into the conversation looking at social anxiety. Good morning, Krista.
Good morning. Thanks again for having me.
Okay, let's step back and talk a bit about anxiety. And I really wanted to start off by looking at one of the issues, which is the prevalence that seems to be, it seems like everyone is talking about anxiety, everyone feels they have anxiety. What's the real picture here?
I will say that it may be that there is an increase in the number of people who are experiencing what they would consider to be anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a very normal emotion, actually. In certain situations, you have a little more fear response than in others. It's part of what alerts your system to pay attention to unfamiliar territory. So anxiety is, in some ways, as a normal emotion, it is useful in some areas. When people say, I have anxiety, it's because they're feeling a fear response in more situations than we consider to be normal. So carrying out your normal everyday activities, if you're feeling intense fear, discomfort, your body is energized as if it needs to fight something or run away, that's not normal to feel on a daily basis. And so interacting with people can heighten that sense of anxiety. And so when it becomes a situation where interacting with people that I'm unfamiliar with or in crowds, certain settings, starts to interfere with how I make my choices, what events I go to, what I don't, I start to sort of shrink my world, then we look at perhaps a diagnosis of social anxiety.
So what you're saying is there's a certain amount of anxiety for just about anything. But then there's that marker where you say, okay, now it's starting to make my life more difficult rather than helping it. And that would be a good point to say, okay, maybe I have an issue with this.
Yeah, and for mental health, that's pretty much one of the things that we look for in any mental health diagnosis. Is it interfering with your daily activities, right? If any emotion that you're feeling is strong enough to interfere with your daily activity, then we need to maybe examine it a little bit more and see if you need help.
Is it a situation where social anxiety is more prevalent among young people these days as opposed to perhaps older folks? Are there any particular trends you're noticing in terms of people accessing service or coming to you for counseling?
Right. We see all ages, and it happens at all stages because there are so many different things that contribute to social anxiety in particular. What we're seeing is a much higher instance of trauma in our societies. Not only trauma that happens to me, but secondary trauma. Watching mass shootings or watching someone get killed or robberies in our area. We're much closer to it than we used to be on a more frequent basis. And so things like that over time, sort of stressful events, really stressful events, not just daily stress, can increase the instances that we see of people who are now more afraid in certain settings.
Would you say that, I heard this so much in September, and so you said it and it triggered a thought. People said, I'm not going out to watch Carnival, or I'm not going to that mass public event because have you seen the news? Do you know what's happening? And a fear that starts to happen that people no longer want to do the activities they love.
Right.
So I think looking at the situation of crime in this country, whether you perceive it at the reality that it is or even, at a bigger scale, that can also have an impact on why people would want to or not want to interact.
Yeah, but there's a very fine line sometimes, and for the average person, right? It would be maybe, okay, I just feel a lot safer not going in that big crowd. Versus, I can't go in that big crowd because my body will react and I can't function. So I can't breathe, I get nauseous, my heart rate is too high, I'm afraid. That is really disruptive. So it's more than just general fear of crime and other situations that we're familiar with. When we talk about social anxiety, we're really talking about a huge disruption.
So you're saying your body will physically react.
That's what anxiety is. If you think about any emotion, it is felt. If you ask someone, where do you feel it? Well, my head gets tight. The back of my neck gets tense. You know, I have a pain in my stomach, or my chest gets tight, or I feel like I have a knot, I can't breathe. Emotions is exactly that. It's a physiological experience of something that our brain is telling us. And it can be positive, it can be negative. It's not really good or bad necessarily. It's what's working for someone and then what generally is not working for them.
So looking at social anxiety, you know, where does it, you said that sometimes it comes from trauma, but is it something that you can just develop? Like there's just an onset of social anxiety, or is it something that builds, or there had to have been an event that took place?
Okay. Social anxiety specifically, just like anxiety or depression or any other, you know, heart condition or high cholesterol, if there's a family history, you may be more at risk of developing symptoms like that. But that's when we're talking about more of a chemical imbalance that produces something like depression or anxiety.
Okay.
Social anxiety can develop from adverse stressful experiences. We see one of the experiences that sort of has a predictive value, doesn't necessarily predict it, but it is very common in people who have experienced both physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. And so having a history of abuse increases the likelihood of developing a variety of different mental illnesses, but anxiety in particular. Because if you think about it, abuse in any form, right, is a violation. It's where someone pushes in on me in some way that is undesired. My body reacts because it feels fear of whatever's happening to me. And so in most instances, it is a traumatic experience because I am perceived to be threatened. Whether it turns out to be real or not is completely and oftentimes irrelevant. It can increase the level of mental illness if the attack actually happened, but even just being in an abusive home, you don't know when you're next. You don't know, I mean, someone you love is being hurt in front of you. And so things like that tend to have some predictive value in contributing to social anxiety. The other thing to consider, and this is a little interesting, a little different from such a heavy focus on trauma, someone who, for instance, has some type of a medical condition, you know, maybe they have seizures. There can be an intense fear of going into a public setting and having a seizure in public and being completely embarrassed or judged by other people. Sometimes having Parkinson's and there's a tremor, there's something visible that people can see. I'm now a little more heightened in my fear of being judged or assessed by the people that I'll be in contact with.
I'd imagine self-esteem issues too.
It can lead to self-esteem issues, or you can have self-esteem issues that contribute to then feeling, again, judged and evaluated by strangers.
But that is what you tell yourself, but not necessarily what other people might be thinking or saying when
Well, that brings me to, thank you so much. One of the points that I really wanted to make is that we see our world, our environment, oftentimes and most times very much based on who we are, not who you are. So I'm not looking at you based on, you know, who you are, your set of circumstances separate from me. I'm seeing based on me. So that's why if I'm pregnant, all of a sudden I see everybody's pregnant. If I buy a certain car, now I see that car everywhere. It's not that the instances of that vehicle in the country have increased. It's that now it's in my purview, and so we tend to see based on our own experiences. But think about it. In a very primitive brain, before we developed all the things that we have now, fear of the unknown is what humans are most threatened by. Right? If I don't know, then I can't assess the level of threat to me because there is an innate will to survive. And so anything different from me, anything that I'm not familiar with, anything that sounds weird, you know, we tend to be more afraid of, and we tend to like, real skeptical, you know, and then when we have lower instances of emotional intelligence, it can really get ignorant with how we express that to each other. So even in a social setting where I might go to hug somebody and they're very stiff, you know, what's wrong with her? You know, why is she going like that? Because we're a huggy society. We hug and we kiss. That's how we greet each other. And it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but if you notice that someone reacts to you a particular way, it's far safer to assume
Yeah.
that maybe they're uncomfortable with that, not
Yeah.
that I did something wrong or
Yeah.
that, you know, they feel a certain way towards me.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. In terms of persons who may be challenged with social anxiety or any other form of anxiety issues, do they readily come forward to seek counseling? Or is it something that, for the most part, they keep it to themselves and it's all bottled in?
You know, Isani, what I see a lot, if I have anxiety, it's really difficult to reach out, and worse to a stranger,
Yeah.
right? And just like a doctor, you really do have to develop a healthy relationship with your therapist. So even if you seek therapy and you don't connect with your therapist, it's quite okay to disengage and look for somebody else. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think once they meet with a counselor, if they don't connect, oh, that didn't work, and then they never go back. And in our society, that happens far more often. And so I really would encourage people that, you know, there's the Mind Health Connect website where you can find out a little bit more about your therapist before you engage, which might help you to feel a little more comfortable, because generally in an anxious position, getting information can be helpful, right? Because it's the unknown a lot of times that has us really scared.
Yeah.
But anxiety is much more complicated than just afraid to talk to someone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's much more disruptive. It's a constant battle with thoughts, with opinions of others, with my self-image, and it can be really, really challenging to fight that negative feedback loop.
Yeah, and people who struggle with anxiety talk about being debilitated, like they're just stuck, they can't move. I mean, I have thought so far ahead as to what can possibly go wrong, I just don't do.
Yeah.
Or don't react or don't say.
And people will say things like, well, just don't think about it. And you just want to punch them in their face
Yeah.
because it's like,
can't
you
not
don't
think
get
about
it.
it, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that what I'm doing is right. It doesn't mean that those thoughts are helpful. We know they're not,
It's just
as a
that-
person who suffers.
Yeah.
But it is way more difficult than just willpower.
And this is where there are mixed messages in the world right now. Because we have a lot of empowering messages about, you know, the law of attraction and controlling your thoughts and being aware of what you let into your mind. And so oftentimes if I take messages like that, it helps me. But if I encounter someone with anxiety, I'm going to use those tools for them. And it's probably one of the worst things, like, oh, you know, you are the keeper of your mind. Don't let those negative thoughts get in there. And they literally have no control over it.
Right. And the difficulty there is, unless you know this person really well and know that they struggle with anxiety, people are really good at hiding it. It takes a hell of a lot of energy to put on that face every day, but a lot of people do. And so you may not know. And that's the other thing that sort of keeps the disease sort of active, that negative feedback loop, is that I have to hide this. It's not acceptable. It's not okay. People are going to say insensitive things to me and I just don't want to deal with it, and I don't want anybody to know. We're embarrassed by it. And so you may not know. It's not that you're wrong for offering whatever positive
You're
energy
doing it
you have.
well-intentioned,
Right, but for the sufferer, I would say and encourage you that, you know, there are diet plans. You can go look up keto. You can go look up workout plans. You can go through P90X or whichever one you want. But oftentimes, what the specific result that a person is trying to reach requires personal training. It requires a tailored program to fit your set of circumstances. And that's essentially what therapy is. It's not only for crazy people. I mean, a lot of the people that I see, for instance, don't even qualify for a diagnosable illness. But
it's never for crazy people. It's what we tell ourselves when we're in denial of needing to seek
it is
the
again
service.
a symptom of our being uncomfortable with things that we don't know. And so for a sufferer, seeking a therapist is picking a personal trainer. Someone to help you work through, identify, and map out your specific set of circumstances, perhaps what are the contributing factors, and then what coping skills fit you and what works for you, because not everything works for everyone.
I guess because I'm extroverted by nature, I've never seen counseling as something that's only for someone who's afflicted with an issue. It's a vehicle or a medium to be able to express whatever it is that's bothering you or whatever it is that you're thinking about. And it's interesting because most people, for whatever reason, figure, well, I'll only seek out a counselor or a therapist because something is mentally, something is in my mind that's not sitting well or what have you. And that's how they look at it. They don't look at it as, well, it's an opportunity for me to sit with someone who's able to either relate or understand enough to be able to share certain advice as to how to address a situation.
And as an extrovert, that thought process comes quite naturally. But for someone who's not as comfortable in a variety of unfamiliar settings and feel more confident with how to navigate, that can be really difficult. In fact, when we talk about people suffering in silence, many times people come in and they'll tell me their story. And they say, I just thought this is the normal ups and downs that everybody experiences. And I'm like, no. Like what you're describing to me, you should not have to carry on your own. Like, I'm so glad you're here and we work on it together. Because a lot of people just really do not know that what they're going through is extreme. Because if you think about it, we're with ourselves all the time. And if this is something that I've been struggling with for a really long time, it feels so normal. Your normal is kind of reset, right? So then to reach out and get help, sometimes life really has to become disruptive.
And I also want to be clear because you said it earlier that people mask anxiety or mental health issues they may be having in different ways. And someone can be really extroverted and happy looking and bubbly and, confident, but they could be masking a whole lot of pain, including anxiety and doing the very same things you know them for.
Right.
So I think being able to help people to recognize what patterns they may have developed or what they're feeling, to know that, okay, I can perhaps get some help to deal with this. You mentioned physical disruptions, like, feeling sick but what about some of the behavioral stuff, like the agitation and, like some people get really nasty. It's like, you have to go to the party and suddenly you're having blow-ups before you head out, when it may be because you're just scared to go, or you thought out what's the worst that can happen. Are those also signs of perhaps having too much anxiety about interacting with people?
It can be. It can be. Specific to social anxiety, if we just, because we could go off on a lot of tangents. Specific to social anxiety, though, it's sort of a fear of being in unfamiliar territory with people that I don't know, sometimes a crowd, if I have to make small talk, if I have to make eye contact. Those things then present your body with significant fear response. And so if you are someone who, has a complete meltdown internally, even if you don't show it externally, before going into a Christmas party, for instance, or a family gathering, even with people that you're familiar with, sometimes that social anxiety can really be there. So sometimes people overdrink to try and calm that system down, or they might, smoke a leaf marijuana before they go. They do different things to try to control the symptoms. But if you are someone who in most social settings has to take extreme measures to get through it, more than likely there may be a social anxiety issue there that's worth exploring.
So what would you say to people? I mean, I think that there are a lot of people at home who hear us talk about anxiety, and because you said it's such a natural reaction that we have. You put something, or you give somebody a challenge that they've never done before. There's a certain feeling that you get inside. Can I do it? Can I not do it? Am I sure? But where all of us have it, some people have it to a different level. So how do we know when we've crossed that boundary?
I think what we look for again is interruption of daily activities. So if there are more days than not that you feel that it's a struggle to get out of bed, to function, we look at how well someone is caring for themselves. Sometimes they start to let things go, like not comb their hair, or you see them not really taking care of themselves the same way that they used to. So there's a change. If that's how you always look, then But we're looking for changes in behavior. So we look at appetite changes. If you're starting to eat more than you normally do or eat less than you normally do. We're looking for sleep disturbances. We're looking for any major shift in how you approach your day. Your interaction with friends and family. Sometimes people start to isolate. And it's one thing, it's very tricky, right? Because it's one thing to isolate to sort of recover. Sometimes I need time alone in order to recoup. So maybe I'm an introvert, right? And I don't necessarily have social anxiety, but I hate social situations. I'm not afraid of them, but I really dislike them. They take a lot of energy. When you talk about being introverted or extroverted, that really is speaking to how you are energized. So extroverts are generally energized by social settings.
Pumped up going.
Introverts are energized by time alone, right? So there's a lot of different contributing factors, but we look for disruptions of daily activities and interruptions, not being able to maintain relationships with friends and family, you know, significant others, sometimes your children, etc. So if you're seeing that, it's worth talking to somebody just to figure out what's going on.
And I mean, in terms of being able to help them with the situation, what are some of the things that one can expect if they seek out a counselor? What's going to change for them?
So when you come into counseling, you are essentially in the beginning developing a relationship with your therapist. Because one of the things that's important is to make sure that you feel comfortable, that your information isn't going anywhere, that it's going to be kept confidential, that, you know, someone handles you professionally, meets you on time. There are certain protocols in the beginning of the session where we let people know what the limits to our confidentiality are, what situations we have to sort of reach out to someone. And then basically it's a getting to know you process, but therapists are trained to identify patterns. We'll never be the expert on anyone's life. I mean, all of the tiny little nuances that are connected to big things, that are connected to last year, that are connected to when my grandma died. I mean, there's so many different connections that we'll never be the expert on, but we are the expert on patterns and how certain types of events can display behaviors and be connected to behaviors you're experiencing now. And so going through all of that helps us to then identify what coping strategies might help. We educate a lot. Because a lot of people have experiences that they, apart from what they went through, they really do not know anything else about it and what that does to you or the effect that it has on your body. So it's like learning, you know, that certain types of Diet Coke still has sugar and can still take up your diabetes. I mean, anyone who has diabetes then has to go through a process of learning about how their body processes different types of foods and their particular type of diabetes. So similarly with health issues, with mental health issues, there's anxiety, but there's you and anxiety, your life and anxiety. And so a therapist really is supposed to help you to understand your specific set of circumstances, what your contributing factors are, and help you to find out where you have the opportunity to make changes and where we need to cope with things that we can't change.
That's a constant process of learning, right?
It
because
is.
If you see yourself in a particular situation where you're dealing with anxiety, you're learning certain things about yourself as you go along in terms of being able to effectively address those issues when you're in that situation.
Yes.
I believe it's something that, you know, you take it on a day-to-day basis, so to speak. Is that?
Well, kind of. I mean, there are patterns, like you say. And so it's important to kind of figure out what my patterns are. And it's amazing because as much as I figure that I'm the expert on me, there are a lot of things that are hidden to me because I am just so accustomed to it. I don't even notice it. You know, I mean, how many times have you been told, oh, you know, you always do that? And it's like, no, I don't. It's like, yes, you do. And then next time you do it, it's like, oh my gosh, I do. So there are
people see you.
Because like what people notice is different from what you're so accustomed to being with yourself that sometimes you don't recognize what's happening until it becomes visible to someone else. And at that point, just like, you know, when you have pain, that means that there's a problem that might have been there for a while. But when it gets to the point of pain, now our body is letting us know that we need to do something about it and we need to address it.
So we really wanted to have this conversation now because we imagine for people with social anxiety, with all the Christmas functions coming up, family gatherings, it's probably a really, really hard time for them. And I think the key part is that people don't have to struggle. They can get help to really get them through what they're struggling with. Talk to us about where people can go to access help.
Okay. The season is upon us.
Yeah.
So highly likely not much of what we'd be able to achieve is going to save people
Yeah.
for December 2019.
Yeah.
But if it opens the conversation and you begin to pay attention to how you feel and you want to begin to address it, you can go to Mind Health Connect, the website. And they're a new organization that has put together a website of all of the mental health and wellness resources that we've been able to find in the country so far. And so there is a good comprehensive list. I think we don't have enough practitioners to really meet the demand, but we're doing all that we can and we'll continue to expand it. But you can check out www.mindhealthconnect.bz, I believe, and you can find out both private practitioners who are available and public places, the rehabilitation centers in all the districts that the government provides free counseling as well.
Yeah, if you go to the clinic, you can ask to see the psychiatric nurse practitioner, and that's free. So if cost is an issue, then you definitely have access there. And I know you guys are on Facebook too, so that's always easy to direct people.
Definitely.
But Krista, thank you for coming in and kind of shedding some light on social anxiety, helping us to understand what it looks like, what it may look like, but more importantly, helping us to understand what people may be feeling. And that's an important knowledge that we all have to acquire. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you.
We are going to go ahead and take a break, and I'll tell you what I'm feeling right now. A little bit hungry. So we have black fruit cake that we're going to be making in the next segment, so you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. back, and it's Christmas season, and we know everybody's ready to get into the kitchen to bake up their black fruit cake. And we have a treat for you today. We are joined by Chef Eva Longsworth.
Morning.
And Eva, of course, has been a part of the Belize culinary team, traveling out. She's also an entrepreneur. You're doing donuts now.
Yes, chef turned donut maker.
I know. So you're in Corozal.
I am in Corozal, and the company is called Donny and Donuts.
Yeah.
So we do handcrafted donuts, and we're open from Monday to Saturday, except for Wednesday.
With all these very unique and in some cases very Belizean flavors.
Yes. Yes, so we have a lot of specials coming out for Christmas. And
Yeah.
we actually have a Christmas menu that's going to run until the end of January.
Yeah.
And then we have a menu for like the last week in January. We're going to launch for just the new year and something more on the lighter side.
Well, my favorite is the Makobe one, right? So that's when you get your Makobe seed upgraded.
Yes.
But of course you're here. You do a wide array of cooking and baking in general. And today you're going to share a special recipe with us, right?
Yes, so actually this recipe is my great-great-grandmother Mura Longsworth's recipe. I don't know if she'd be very happy with me doing it live in public, but it's as authentic as we can get, because in her days she would make her fruits way months ahead of time, you know, in advance, and she'd make the citron peel and everything from scratch. So today we have the convenience of buying it in store.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of black fruit cake.
Oh, of course.
Because black fruit cake is something that came as part of the British heritage, and it's actually a derivative of something that they called figgy pudding or Christmas pudding. You know, in the carols they say, "Give me some figgy pudding."
Yeah.
So eventually, later on, they started to add flour and eggs and butter, and it became richer and it became a cake. When it came to Belize, though, certain ingredients got mixed into the recipe.
Yeah.
You know.
Like we don't normally have figs available.
We don't have figs, so we use the tropical fruits that sometimes you wonder why it's all dried fruits, why raisins, why prunes, why maybe apricots, or why the citron and cherries, fruits that aren't from here. But those are the traditional fruits that were used. But a lot of people now use like stewed cashews. They put in this version we're doing, we have stewed pineapple inside. Ooh. You know, stewed papaya sweet. Chopped up inside as well. So you could really get creative with this and create your own version and use what's local, because we know the fruits sometimes hit the budget.
Yeah.
So
my sweet tooth is so excited with everything you just said. But so we, and some of the things that we did come around to add, I would imagine, as you said, the fruits, we have some of the nuts and the blackening. Now, I know from my mother that she's very concerned that the blackening is not black enough. And you were telling me the same.
yes, so it's actually something that they call it in England treacle, and it's a byproduct of the sugar industry. And then a lot of food companies use it as coloring, so it's not only used in black fruit cake.
Okay.
Because here in Belize we have such a vibrant sugar industry.
Yeah.
In the process, our coloring will get super dark, so the cakes would have that real intense dark black color.
Yeah.
An avid producer that used to make this coloring in Belize, I think they stopped. I'm not sure. So you can't really find one that's really dark enough, but it still has the same flavor.
Okay.
You know, just
So
not
the
same
blackening does
color.
not add flavor, it just add color?
It adds flavor and color. It adds a bitterness and a richness of like a molasses flavor as well.
Okay. Yeah. You do some baking, Isani?
Not quite, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay. So you're going to teach us your chef's secrets here, right?
Okay, so to start, I have 8 ounces of butter, which is 1 cup.
Okay.
And
Are you specific about your butter choice?
yes.
Is it butter or margarine, first of all?
This is real butter.
Yeah.
I prefer it because it's a more natural product. It's not synthetic like margarine.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that you know where it comes from. It comes from cow milk. It comes
Yeah.
from heavy cream. You know, you could make it yourself if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So
And it tastes better.
it does have more flavor. So to this, we're adding sugar. So it should be 2 cups of sugar. I actually reduced the sugar a little bit because the coloring isn't so dark,
Yeah.
I increased the amount and I'm adding some more syrup to balance off the flavor.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
actually 1 3/4 cups of sugar in here.
Okay.
So if you want, you can go ahead and cream
I'm
the
telling
butter.
you, we're getting some serious chef secrets here. I hope you brought a recipe card so we can share with people, because
Yes, yes, definitely. And if you want to help me here, you could come
Okay,
measure
I'll
out
come
this
over.
flour. All right. So we need 3.5 cups of flour.
okay. So you cream the butter and sugar.
And for how long? Everybody wants to know. So
Yep.
the whole process of creaming it, it creates volume in the cake, and it breaks up the butter particles with the sugar. So if you notice the butter that we used, it was very yellow,
Yeah.
you know. And then when you finish creaming it, it's gonna get pale, light, almost white in color. So that's how you know how much you creamed it. Okay. So you had 3 cups. or-
Yes, 3.5.
3 of
which
this?
is- Yeah.
Okay.
You said
So
3.5,
this
right? Yeah.
is one.
What are some of the other like mistakes you can make in making
All
a
right.
cake like this?
So let's start from the first one. If you cook it in a high oven and the temperature is too high and it's not even, you have the cake coming out slanted. So one of the ways you can fix that is by using a tray like this at the bottom of the oven, and you fill it up with water
Oh, you put water in a baking tray.
in a baking tray, and that's gonna even out the temperature of your oven. Because you know sometimes we get attached to our stoves and they already have a little bit of holes in the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the flour. To that we're going to add baking powder. And to know how much you're using, pretty much it's 1 pound of flour.
Okay.
And we're going to add a teaspoon per cup. So 1 pound is 3.5. So we're gonna add 3 teaspoons of baking powder to that. Right? And then you want to sift your flour.
Okay. So even though the bag says pre-sifted, you still encourage people to sift.
Yes, you want to sift it again because a lot of times something can get inside the flour, and that's
Yeah.
how you know before you're putting it into your cake if
Okay.
it has weevils, or also in transit it tends to get compacted.
Yeah.
And sometimes it picks up moisture and clumps.
Yeah.
So you always want to sift your flour right before you use it.
Okay.
And
Got
that's
you.
another tip.
Yeah.
So to this, we're also incorporating the baking powder and the flour evenly when you sift it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the key things. Maybe you could finish off
Sure.
that.
Ha! Eva said she's not here to work alone.
All right, so
Okay,
you want to cream that a little bit more.
Yeah, I got some clumps of butter on my mix stuck in my mixer.
Okay, and then after you do that, we're going
Okay.
to add some spices to the flour. So this is where the cake picks up its flavor. And we're going to use 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice. So how much is 1/8 of a teaspoon? Pretty much a pinch. And then we're going to put a teaspoon of cinnamon to that mixture as well. And we're going to put a 1/2 teaspoon. You just struggle though with the of ginger.
I know.
And now the secret ingredient here is pretty much not that secret at all. Is nutmeg.
Oh.
So you always want to use a fresh nutmeg.
Yeah.
And it looks like pretty much like a seed, like a plum seed. And if you could always buy it whole instead of ground, you get more flavor
Yeah.
when you grate it before using. And this is something that we're eyeballing here, so you're just going to use it until it's enough. Or you don't want to overdo it because it's a very pungent spice, so just
Yeah.
keep that in mind. But some people like it, so you can add a little bit extra. Now to this mixture that we have here, just want to put that aside. And we're going to take our fruits that was pre-prepared. So the fruits here have been soaking for a week in rum. And the one thing different that we have here is some stewed pineapple. So what this does, it adds a little bit of more moisture
Okay,
to
but
the mix.
can you tell us that process of how you did that? So traditionally, you take the fruits and you put them in dark rum or any
as
kind
dark
of
rum or any kind you prefer.
Yeah.
You could also use brandy as well if you like.
Yeah.
So some people cook the brandy in the stove on the stove with the fruits.
With the fruits,
I
right?
think you're wasting the alcohol pretty much.
Oh, okay.
In that scenario. So what we do is I use a little bit of sugar and water, or you could add some maybe like some orange juice if you like to that
to
mixture.
cook it.
To cook it. And when it starts to get plump and juicy, you take it off the stove and then you add your rum directly to it and have it soak for at least a week. And you keep it in your fridge.
Because you're going to burn off the alcohol if you cook
When
it
in there, and you're eventually going to bake it anyway, but that's how you get most of the flavor and the moisture of the rum into the fruits by soaking it ahead.
And then the stewed pineapple, how'd you make that?
Okay, so we just put it in a saucepan, add a little bit of sugar, and cook it down until it's a little bit soft.
Okay, does it change, because it's a regular yellow, it doesn't change color or anything like that?
It's just gonna stay just yellow like that.
And you mix that with the liquid in with the fruits?
Yes.
All right.
And in the fruits have the cherries already and the citron and everything. And I'm just gonna strain out this liquid here. And we're going to reserve all of that niceness. All that
I
goodness
know,
there.
right? That's alcohol syrup.
Yes.
It doesn't get yummier than that.
So we have it here pre-measured. So I like the fruit cake to be really loaded. So I have 2 pounds of fruits here already measured out, right? And then
You can smell it.
Oh, it smells so nice though.
we're gonna put this over here, and then this is what we're going to mix with even more rum to moisten the cake later on. So we're going to add the fruits to this bowl.
Wow.
And it's one mistake that happens when you're baking is that people say my fruits fall to the bottom.
Yeah.
So to prevent that, what you want to do
It's flour then.
you're going to drench them in some flour and then just mix it.
So I'm thinking.
Is this good?
You want to cream it a
little bit more. So what consistency are we going for?
It's going to be light, fluffy, and it's going to actually change in color.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little bit paler than that.
Do I mix this or do
You go
I?
ahead and mix it.
I remember as kids we used to have to do this by hand and help my mom.
That's true.
Ugh.
So we're going to use 5 eggs.
Okay. You started with how much flour?
We started with a pound of flour,
A pound of flour.
which is equivalent to 3 and 1/3 cups of flour.
And you do your eggs separately.
Yeah. So we're just gonna put it here in one bowl.
Okay.
Right.
Look at all the tips we've gotten so far. So first of all, real butter. Secondly,
butter, yes.
flour your fruit.
All right.
Also, add some nutmeg, fresh nutmeg, more importantly.
I like to add the essence that I'm using directly into the butter and the sugar mixture, because I think when you're adding your eggs, it's going to get more incorporated.
Okay.
So we're going to add.
Are we good?
We're going to add to this a 1/2 teaspoon of pineapple essence. And then we're going to use a teaspoon of rum. All right.
So we did rum essence and pineapple.
Yes. You could also use vanilla if you like, brandy, flavored essence, almond essence works good in the cake as well.
Okay. Just mix this up.
And that's where you could really modify this recipe. Go ahead and mix that. And then we're going to add each egg one at a time. right, we're gonna add a little bit more flour to the fruit. You want to really get loose.
By all means, tell me if I'm using the wrong technique.
No, you're doing great.
So you do one egg at a time just to make sure it's properly mixed in?
Exactly.
Yeah, we need a spatula.
Yeah, it's right over there.
Oh, there's one here, and I've been using a spoon.
Okay. All right. And then we have 2 more eggs to go.
Yeah. Last one. Woohoo.
All right. You did an excellent job there.
Hey, Sunny, you can go home and make some cake now.
I'm learning a thing or two, Marlene.
So question, why use rum essence and not rum?
Because if you put too much rum, it's gonna change the to get the real flavor, you're gonna have to add too much. It's gonna change the texture of the cake.
Oh.
And it might get too watery, and that's also gonna cause your fruit to sink if your batter is too liquid.
Oh, okay. So you advise using the rum essence instead?
Yeah.
Because you get the flavor of the rum without all the liquid.
And we're done with the mixer.
Okay.
All right.
Ta-da! There's a cake in the making.
Okay, so what we're gonna do at this step, we're finished with the mixer.
Okay.
And you're just gonna fold everything by hand. You don't want to over mix the cake itself. So to that we have there, we're going to add the coloring.
Okay.
Here you go. Right. And then I'm going to add in the flour just a little by little.
And this will make a lighter cake?
This is going to give your cake, sometimes when you bake a cake, you get tunnels, like little holes going inside. That's because your cake's overmixed.
Okay.
So you just want to go ahead and incorporate everything together, but you don't want to beat it any more than you have to.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
It also makes a more tender cake.
I'm learning as we go along.
Man, I'm telling you,
All
some
right.
child at home just got more work to do. I'm sorry. Just using mixers.
And now we're going to alternate with 1 cup of liquid. Now this liquid that you put in there, you could go ahead and you can use your milk if you want.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people use milk.
Yeah.
But in the old days, because they didn't have refrigerators, milk was not a traditional ingredient in the cake.
Okay.
Because we're eating it really fast these days and we make it so quickly, milk is fine. It gives it more creamier and buttery flavor.
Okay.
But we're going to stick with tradition here.
Okay.
And we have 1 cup of juice. In this case, it's prune juice. And we're going to add that to the mix. You could use grape juice if you'd like. You could use apple juice. You
So
could use
definitely
pineapple
staying
juice.
in that dark tone with the prune juice, or that's just a flavor that you would like?
It does add some color to it as well.
Okay.
So you alternate between the flour and the juice. Okay. All right. And a little bit more right there.
So there you have it. Chef Eva says, put away the KitchenAid when you're making black cake and go old school for the best texture.
Exactly. So here we have some golden syrup. I use a particular brand that's imported.
What's golden syrup?
Golden syrup, as we know it in Belize, is called like Tate and Lyle. They know it by the
The
brand.
green can.
The green can.
I love that stuff.
This is actually a sugar syrup.
Okay.
So it has a really strong sugary flavor. And an interesting fact is that they use Belizean sugar to make this Tate and Lyle syrup. So we're just we're importing something back that we have here that started here, right? So we're bringing it back home. Okay, so we're going to add the syrup there.
So, okay, so let's refresh your memory here. You said you cut down on the amount of sugar by a 1/4 cup.
Yes.
Because you were going to replace it with some syrup and some extra blackening.
Extra blackening, yes. So in this recipe, I'm using a cup of blackening because the color isn't as dark as you'd hope to want it for.
Okay.
And then I have 3/4 cups of the golden syrup in there.
Are we done?
So that's pretty much set.
Okay.
And if you want to
Telling
do
me
the
don't
flavor,
overmix it.
to fold in the fruits. Okay, and
Yes,
here
Isani. Men bake too.
we have a pound of nuts already chopped.
And your nuts of choice?
This is a mixture of pecan and almond,
Okay.
right? You could use whatever nuts you like inside the cake. You know, I've actually made one with peanuts inside, and it has a really interesting flavor.
Yeah, because usually it's pecans or walnuts that people put in
you could use peanuts because it's over there, you know?
I like the way you think.
So you could go ahead and add that to the mix as well.
You know, the fruits make a difference. And I think when you have your own unique variety of fruits, that's already like stepping the game up on your fruit cake.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
know I have a particular friend, I'm not calling their name. They actually use the stew cashew, and it was one of the nicest black cake I've ever had.
So how did they mix it in with the fruits?
With the fruits, yeah.
Yeah, because stew cashew is really sweet, but it's also dark too.
It's
So
also
it would
dark.
blend right in with a black cake.
Yep. And then this mixture is going to be folded. And let's prepare our pan
Okay.
over here. So I want to take a minute to talk
But
about
it's non-stick. What do you have to prepare?
because you want to be. We're going to take this cake and we're going to flip it over.
Okay.
Right?
Like an upside down.
Like an upside down. Then you want to have a certain barrier to help you with that flipping process, just to make sure it doesn't break, you know. And then also helping with when you're serving and the preservation of it. I like to line the pan with a little bit of wax paper.
Okay.
Right? So, but we're gonna talk about the pans. So a lot of times you buy these aluminum pans in the store.
Yeah.
And they're very flimsy,
Yes.
right? So if you're going to use them, which is good because you don't have to worry about somebody taking your pan and not bringing it back. You just want to make sure you have it tripled to give you enough stability when you're baking, and also for the heat in it. It's not gonna overcook, it's not gonna cook too fast.
Because they're so thin
and
and
it's gonna
cooked,
even
yeah.
out the heat.
And then you
absorption.
also said to take a baking tray and fill it with
with
some
water
in there.
and that goes to at the bottom of your oven.
Okay, you put
way
that
at
to
the bottom on the floor surface
Okay.
of the oven. Yeah, and what
And
that's
then you put the cake on the tray, like
on the tray
normal
in the center, in the middle of the oven.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what heat are you at?
We're going to preheat the oven. Always, it's the first step.
Okay.
And we're going to do it for 350 degrees or 176 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Right.
350. Good.
Or 176.
Or 176.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of times you have ovens that's made in Mexico, and you're like, oh, but this, there's no 350, you know? So you're gonna look for 176.
Yeah.
Right? So, you want
right.
to help me grease
So,
this pan here?
The nuts, Isani, you forgot your nuts. Oh. Okay. So I'm going to butter the non-stick pan.
The non-stick pan, because we're gonna be extra cautious here.
This just goes against my nature. That's why we get non-stick.
And then
I know.
also too, you know, when you have your pans for a very long time, they get little surface scratches.
That's true.
So you want to prevent any sticking. And we're going to pretend here that our viewers don't have a non-stick pan at home.
I got you.
So
No, I get you. The safety of still buttering the non-stick and wax paper.
So what I did just now is I take a normal piece of wax paper and I fold it in 4, right? A little origami here. And then you fold it again and you fold it again. So you get like a little triangle, and we're going to cut it into a perfect circle. And how we're going to do that, you're just going to measure at the bottom of the pan.
Around the center, you put
Around
the
the
middle.
center, And then we're going to mark that right there and cut the excess. When you open it up,
It fits.
Nice.
right? There we go. So your pan's already prepared. You could do the extra step of flouring, but with the wax paper, that preserves all of that and all the extra mess. Right?
Okay.
So
Do we have to butter the wax too?
no, because the wax already has that grease barrier, it won't
Okay.
stick. But you can if you want to.
And if you use parchment instead of wax, does it make a difference?
If you're using parchment, then you want to put an extra layer of butter
Okay.
on top. So how much to fill your pan is always a question, right?
Okay.
These pans is a 2-inch pan, so you always want to go like 3/4 of the way up,
Okay.
right? So in that case, we're going to reserve 1/2 inch of the pan,
Okay.
right? You don't want to overfill your pan because then it overflows and creates a mess in your
Yeah.
oven. That's like the first mistake that when you're just baking a cake.
Did we put in the nuts?
Oh no, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's not you. Isani, you didn't do your job. You left your nuts out.
Okay. So we're just gonna fold this in. And then
Oh, that's a heavy
we're going to fill this.
Oh, that looks so good.
Okay.
So that's like at 3/4.
Yeah. So a lot of people take the pan, lift it, and tap it. What you're doing is automatically sending your fruits to the bottom.
Okay.
So in this case,
like thinking of all the things I need to correct now.
so in this case, we're not gonna do. We're just gonna spread and gently pat the batter in to get rid of any air
Oh,
bubbles.
wow. Okay.
And then we just want to spin it around.
Eva, you're like mythbuster for cake making.
You know, and that's because I'm not a baker by profession. So then this goes into our oven.
TV oven.
Here.
Ta-da.
Put it in. And you know, in the old days, they say, you know, walk around the oven because your cake won't sink, you know, make too much noise. I think that's just to keep the kids in line, you know.
Yeah.
So here we have
And out of the TV oven. That's what TV ovens do.
a prepared baked cake. And we're just gonna run a knife around the edge of the cake. Okay?
Okay.
And you want to do the honors of flipping it over?
Okay. This is if it breaks, you'll blame me?
Not really, it's not gonna break, it's good.
Okay. I don't think it's out yet.
You want to make sure your cake is a little bit warm when you flip it,
Yeah.
but in the case that this
We
was
have it cold.
yesterday-
Yeah. It's
There
out.
it is.
Uh-huh.
Ta-da!
And that's where the wax paper also
smells
helps.
good.
Pull it off.
I didn't center it.
That's okay.
You have a chef trip. Okay, good. I was like, she has a chef trip for that.
All right.
For the
And
human
ta-da.
errors that may take place.
And here we have some cherries and some nuts for garnish if you want to decorate the top.
And what about soaking the rum, the cake with rum?
I'm gonna get to that right now.
Oh, okay, good, good.
So you want to put the fruits on top. Do your little
You be
your own
decorative now.
artistic flair right there. And we're
Okay,
gonna
Sandy, your mom is so gonna take you into the kitchen for her black fruit cake making.
All right, so now we're going to work on the mixture we're going to wet the cake with. So this is the same syrup from the fruit, so it has all that flavor and all that rum. And to that, we're going to add a little bit of a sweet red wine. We're not gonna call any names here.
That's common. Most people use that for black cake.
And then I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of extra rum.
Okay.
Sounds like a rum commercial, Joe.
I know, right?
And then
It's a serious black
so
cake.
what I recommend is if you're going to make this cake like a week before Christmas, you want to start wetting it with rum because that's
I'm busy paying attention to what she's doing.
so we're just going to mix that mixture together, right? And we're going to pour over the cake.
So your recipe, or this recipe, is more like a rum cake, because most people have been mixing it in for as long as possible, mixing it in the process of making cake. But this is like rum cake where you put that glaze on
You're
top.
putting, yes, like
Yeah.
a glaze. So what we're doing is going to keep the more moisture in. And also the rum has a preservative in there.
Yeah.
So you can leave it out for a week and it won't stay dry. So every day as you wake up in the morning, you know, and you
Wet
comb your
the
hair and
cake,
you brush your
yeah.
teeth,
You
we're
take
going
a
to
drink
take
and
the
you
rum, you know, and we're just gonna rub it
Give it
over
a
the
drink.
cake. And the more you do that, the more flavor, the more moisture it's going to have.
Is it going to be overwhelming with rum?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I wouldn't say so because the base of the flavor in the fruits, you have the pineapple flavors, the essences are going to kick in, the molasses flavor from the dark coloring is going to go in. So I wouldn't say it's going to be overly rummy.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you want to wet your cake while it's still a little bit warm.
Yeah.
So it could absorb much of that
Faster,
moisture.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're working with a cold cake, clearly, for TV.
There you go.
Yeah.
And if you want to do the honors,
Ooh, give me. Oh my gosh, it looks so good.
I didn't get plates.
We'll do tissue. So, okay, Eva, thank you. You have given us so much information, and I want to recap, right? So, for everybody at home, to avoid any black cake disaster, let's go through the tips. To even out the cooking, put a tray of water underneath
In your
plates.
oven.
Can you get plates? In the bottom of your oven. To even out the cooking. If you're using disposable pans, triple it
Triple it, yes.
so that
you have enough stability, and then the heat that is going to be even out going to your cake so you don't burn the bottom of your cake.
So that's baking. 350 preheated
Or 176.
or 176 Celsius. What else did we do?
The next tip, if your cake is overcooked and it comes out too dry, don't worry, you're gonna wet it anyway.
Okay.
Right? So nobody's gonna know.
Yeah.
If your cake is too crumbly, that's because you're not adding enough eggs into your mixture. So 5 seems like a lot, but you won't pick up that eggy flavor.
Okay.
But it's going to keep your fruits together in your mixture.
Don't beat down your pan. Otherwise, your fruits will go to the bottom. Just spread it in the pan itself. All right, that would look much better. And this can be my snack.
And we're just going to imagine that this cake is as dark as we'd like it to be.
All right, so here's the presentation of the black cake.
Oh my gosh. Black fruit cake a la Eva and her secret family recipe, which is not so secret anymore.
It's an enduring Longsworth tradition.
I know, Granny Mura Longsworth's recipe.
Oh, thank you,
you wanna
so
taste
much.
it and
Of
let the
course, I'm
viewers
going to
know
taste
why?
it. Yeah. But I also wanted to remind people that while you're not doing black cake, you're doing your donuts.
I am making donuts for Christmas.
Are you doing a
but
black fruit cake donut?
I actually have something in the making. So we're gonna see it as a surprise. It's gonna come out. That's gonna come out more closer to Christmas.
This is so good. Zanu, you have to try it.
Yeah. So
Moist?
I would, because I'm booked out, I
Lots
would
of
take a
flavor.
few orders. Like maybe the first 10 people is fine, you know.
Okay.
But I don't want to overcompromise either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the cake is delicious. And you know what it is? It's not like that heavy, dense cake that we normally get for black fruit cake.
Yeah.
It has flavor, it's soft. And those fruits, I think I got a piece of pineapple just now. That was delicious. All right. Thank you for coming in and sharing your tips.
You're welcome. I just want to encourage viewers to give it a try at home. You know, don't be overwhelmed by it. People say, I do white fruit cake, I don't make black. But go ahead and try it, you know. You'll get the same flavor. You might not get the same color, you know. And bring it back into tradition, you know, and make it from scratch.
Get the kids involved and the husbands too, right? Isani was very helpful in that recipe. All right, we're going to go ahead and take that final break now. When we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize,
And we're back.
I'm back.
I finished a slice of cake. Feeling a bit of guilt for the type of breakfast I'm having, but that was so delicious.
It is indeed delicious.
And just, you know, Christmas is so close that, and as we start getting into our programming with all of the tradition, it just, it makes me feel so great. I want to say a big thank you to Chef Eva. Of course, she's in Corozal, but she came here for the show and shared some amazing and helpful tips for making your black cake at home. Remember, she makes donuts as well. I highly recommend that you try it. She's on Facebook. It's Donnie and Donuts. And you can get any of her unique flavors of donuts and order, and she'll send them any part of the country that you want, so you can be able to have a try.
We want to remind and, of course, encourage Belizeans to spend the money at home as well. Make sure that the dollars stay here so that it can be used for other projects and other purposes, right? So that it's not all things online or all things Cheddar Mall or Melcher. Spend some dollars here and help keep our economy growing.
That's right. And we also want to thank Krista Courtney for coming in. She is a professional counselor, and she talked to us about social anxiety. We know a lot of people might be struggling around this time, and we do encourage you to seek out some help. So that you can be able to get some strategies as to how to cope through times like these and any other time that may be coming in the near future. If you want to get access to a list of professional counselors and public institutions that offer counseling, oftentimes for free, you can go to Mind Health Connect website, and you can find them on Facebook, and you can get your access from there. But the most important thing is, as much as we try to take care of our physical health, we have to take care of our mental health as well.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Yep.
And with that, we'll wrap up the show. Remember, if you want to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ, and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
And your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.